Welcome to the 5-Pillar webinar here today. We're glad you're able to join us. My name is Joe Schmitz. I'm a certified financial planner and also the CEO and founder of Peak Retirement Planning. We are a retirement planning firm here in Columbus, Ohio. We primarily plan retirements. That's what we do every day. And so I know we've got some people on here from Columbus, Ohio. And so if you are, as you all know the saying, OH, and you've got to follow it with IO, right? And then I know we've got some people all across the country here as well. And so we're going to really talk you through our 5-pillar process that we feel is the foundation of retirement planning. We feel that all financial planners should be doing this. So if you're working with an advisor, just making sure that they're following through on all these steps is going to be extremely important. And we call it our 5-pillar approach, and it's something that we take our clients through to make sure there's no holes in the boat of their retirement plan, to make sure that there's gaps, but also to make sure everything is done in one place. So something we've ran into is that when you're working with an advisor that maybe only does investment planning, how are you going to communicate the changes to the estate plan, the changes to the tax plan, if they only focus in one area? And so bringing it all together is what we feel is the best. And so if you're not working with a firm like ours, we'd recommend you do. And if it's us or someone else, regardless of who it is, just make sure you're working with someone who's truly doing all of this for you, just to make sure you're not missing anything, is our best advice there for you. So we know a lot of people who attend these webinars are looking for further guidance, and so you'll have an opportunity to schedule a time with our team if you are looking for this type of comprehensive help moving forward. And so I'll have someone on our team go ahead and pop that link up that you'll be able to click on to schedule a time. And with this session, it's really just to get to know you and your situation and really allow us to just give you further guidance for where you're at. And so we'll be able to point out just different areas that we feel that you need to look at further based on the information you share with us, and or tell you, hey, you're in a great spot, keep doing what you're doing, your advisor's doing great work, and if that's the case, then you're good to go. So that's the goal there with that call, and feel free to schedule it. We don't charge for that. It's just a way to make sure everyone on this call is going to be able to get further guidance for what they need to, and no one's left stranded is ultimately the goal. So for the call today, for the webinar today, there's going to be no chat feature. We want to make sure everything is private that you type in to us. And so you'll be able to use that Q&A feature there. That is all private, confidential. It only is shared between you and our team. We're not going to be able, no one else on the webinar here is going to be able to see that. And so use that to your discretion. If you have any questions throughout the webinar, that's the place to put it. And at the end of this webinar, I'll actually carve out time just to cover those questions at the end. So if it's important for you to get that answered, put it in there. I will try to get to as many of those as I can. And so if there's extra that I don't get to, and that would be a good time just to schedule that call, and we can discuss that on that phone call, would be what you want to do there for that Q&A. And then if I don't answer it here on this call, or maybe it's more advanced, I'll try to respond to you afterwards, or again on that call, and we'll be able to get you an answer for that. So that's how we'll operate here today. With that being said, let's go ahead and get started here. So first, here's the 5 pillars really spelled out. And the first thing we're going to talk about today is the tax planning pillar. Now, in my opinion, this is the one that is most important, because I believe that taxes are going to be the biggest expense throughout your retirement. And so with that being the case, we need to make sure we have a plan for that. And so what I see with most people is they do not want to pay more in taxes in retirement. They want to pay less. I've never had someone come to me and say, I want to donate money to the IRS above what my tax bill is. No one says that. They all want to pay less. And if you're like me, I just don't necessarily think the government's the best steward of all of our tax-paying dollars. And so I'd rather choose how that's used and make sure that's in my pocket, so I can choose what's my values, my goals, and what I believe is going to make a difference, versus letting the government decide what that is for us. So don't get me wrong, I love the libraries, I love the roads. I think the government does some great things for us. I'm not anti-USA. Our military is awesome, but I just want to make sure we are being smart about how we are paying our taxes, so we're not overpaying. I don't want to tip Uncle Sam. I'll pay him my fair share, but don't want to tip. So if that's you, we're going to share some different strategies there. Our firm has over 50 tax planning strategies that we do for our client every year. And so we're going to open a book to some of those different ideas and concepts that we're looking at right now with many of our clients that you'll be able to actually take with you right away and start to implement into your tax plan there. So that will be the first pillar. The next pillar is going to be healthcare planning. So with healthcare planning, that's going to involve planning for things like Medicare and long-term care, and making sure that the out-of-pocket healthcare expenses are going to be in check. So as you all know, we're all living longer, but we're not living better. where healthcare costs are increasing. Demand for healthcare is increasing. There's more people who need it, and there's less people to care for us. And so if that's the case, costs are going to increase. And so we need to have a plan for when that happens, not if, but when it happens, is where it's almost inevitable that healthcare costs are going to go up within retirement. So that's what we'll cover in that pillar there. The next pillar is estate planning. Now, estate planning is the one that everyone says they need and want, but not everyone has. And so with the estate planning pillar, we're going to talk about what documents you need in place for when you pass away and when you get to those end of life situations. And we're going to talk about being proactive with that, making sure you have it in place, because the stat shows that only 70 or really only 30% of people have an estate plan in place when they pass away. And so our encouragement to you all, our encouragement as a firm, is how do we help more people get an estate plan in place? Now, with an estate plan, you may not need everything. You may not need a trust. You may not need all this sophisticated documentation, but there are certain things that you will want to have in place, like a power of attorney and a will. And so we're going to talk you through all those documents you want to make sure you have in place, and then talk through some more advanced concepts that may be appropriate for you depending on your situation. But our encouragement is that we want everyone to have some sort of plan, and really anyone who is 18 or up needs some sort of estate plan. And so that's our encouragement there, and so we're going to walk you through what that looks like. The next pillar we're going to talk about is the income planning pillar. So with the income planning pillar, it's all about how do we get you that paycheck for the rest of your life? So all these years you've been working and you've been having an employer pay you every year to live on. Well, now you no longer have that employer coming in, and now you have to create your own paycheck. Now we do have Social Security, which will account for a portion of our income, but we're responsible for getting the other portion of our income, which will come from things like our investment accounts, maybe a pension. And so with that, we need to figure out how all that plays together to ensure that we're not risking running out of money by the time we end our life. And so we want to make sure that that does not happen. And the way we do that is by having a rock solid income plan, because like I said, your income goes here and then it falls off. Well, we don't want the bridge to stop there. We need to create a bridge that goes from here to the end of our life with making sure we have enough to do so. So that's what we're going to talk about in the income planning pillar there, talk about Social Security, and we're going to talk about 3 keys to income and retirement. So those are the 3 things you're not going to want to miss to make sure that you've got everything in place there. And then the 5th pillar here that we're going to talk about is the investment planning pillar. And so this is one that many people are focused on, but maybe they're not necessarily as focused on it as they need to, because what we see is that most people who come and see us for the first time are taking on more risk than they need to at this point in their life. They may be still investing like they're 30 or 40 years old, but in reality, they're 60 or 65 and they're in or near retirement. And so if that's you, maybe we don't have to seek a ton of growth or a ton of risk with our portfolio. Maybe we just need slow, steady, consistent, safe over time to make sure we don't have any big losses. And so we're going to talk through that concept there of what does it mean to take less risk in retirement, and is that what you should do? And because at the end of the day, are you trying to build bigger barns, or are you trying to make sure you've got a retirement plan without any holes in it? It's ultimately the question you have to ask. So we're not here to give specific advice or encourage you to do something that you don't want to do, but it's a valid question to ask yourself is, are you taking on too much risk, and do you want to take on more risk than you need to? And so that's a question you have to ask yourself. Now, the more risk you take, the more return potential you have, right? So we have to be smart and see how can we structure a plan accordingly to still get growth, but not take as much risk. So that's the goal there. All right, so let's go ahead and get started on the tax planning pillar here. Now, when it comes to the tax planning pillar, I always start this conversation off with blueberries. So if you ever heard me talk before, if you've ever come to a workshop or a webinar I've done, or you've watched my YouTube or podcast, or you've seen me on TV or radio, you've probably heard the blueberry story. And so the blueberry story goes like this. My mom loves blueberries. And so whenever I'm at her house, whenever I go in the freezer, it's always full of blueberries. And I always ask my mom, why do you have so many blueberries? Well, they're on sale when she bought them, right? So if she buys them for 99 cents, she's going to stock up, because she knows if she goes to the store that next week, she's going to have to pay $3 for them. And if she knows she's going to eat blueberries every day and she's going to put blueberries in her smoothie every single day, why would she pay more in the future? She's going to freeze them anyways. So that's the concept of the blueberry sale. Now, if that's you and you love saving money and you love being frugal, well, I've got a savings for you right now that you need to make sure you've got written down. And this is what we call a tax sale that is going on right now. So what do I mean by there's a tax sale right now? Well, think about it. Do you think tax rates will go up or down in the future? Most people think that tax rates are going up. Why are they going up? Well, one, we've got a debt crisis. We've got $30 trillion plus in debt right now in our country. We've got more interest accumulating on our debt than we have revenues coming in to cover that, which means what? Our debt is going to continue to climb. And my question to you is, how are we going to take care of this debt crisis over time? One is we can reduce spending. Most people don't feel confident in that. Most people don't expect that to happen with the way our government has been spending. And the second way is we can raise revenues. Now, how do we raise revenues? Well, raise taxes is one way. And so if we get more tax revenue coming in, that's going to help to pay off some of that debt. And so that's what most people expect. So if you expect tax rates to go up because of that, maybe we need to start planning now. The other reason why tax rates are on sale is because right now, tax rates are among the lowest that they've been in history. And so if they're among the lowest that they've been, where are they going to go from here? Well, obviously up. But also considering all those things I just mentioned with the debt crisis and with tax rates lower, well, we're probably going to expect them to be higher moving forward. And there's a key thing I want you to write down here, and that's called, it's the year 2026. So in 2026, there's something called the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act that President Trump enacted back in 2017 that's going to expire. And so what that means is we have a limited amount of time to take advantage of this tax sale. And it's only going to be good for a certain period of time, and then our tax rates are going to go up. For most Americans, come 2026, tax rates will rise by about 20%. The amount of taxes you pay will increase by about 20% at that time. So what's my point? Well, if we can pay our taxes now at these lower rates versus later at these higher rates, we may be in for a better place, and we may be able to save a lot of money. And so if you're the type of individual that goes and buys your blueberries on sale and you save the few bucks there, great, good job. But what if you could save thousands of dollars just by smart tax planning, by utilizing the tax planning sale we have right now today? And I'm very confident that, you know, if you've been a diligent saver, it's not outside the realm of possibility to save hundreds of thousands of dollars by just implementing some of the tax planning strategies we're going to discuss into your plan. And you could end up with more money throughout your retirement to go spend and do the things you want to do, travel to the places you want to travel, spend more time with the grandkids, not have to worry as much about the financial side of things, because you're going to have more money in your pocket just by being tax smart. Again, at this point, you may not need more money. You may just need a better plan. And so the tax planning is a way that you can keep more of that hard-earned life savings in your pocket and less in Uncle Sam. So that's the idea of this tax sale. And so what we're primarily talking about this tax sale is when it comes to your tax-deferred investments. Now, I've got a chart here, a slide here that talks about tax-deferred investments. Now, with a tax-deferred investment, this is going to be your IRAs, your 401ks, your 403b, your TSP, your deferred comp if you're a state employee. In these investments, you have not paid taxes on it yet. And so when you put your $10,000 into a tax-deferred investment, you get a tax savings today. Now, when this $10,000 grows to $100,000, you take out $100,000. Well, now you're going to have to pay taxes on that $100,000. It's going to count as income. So you save on 10, but you pay on $100,000. Is that a good deal? And most people would say probably not, right? So with this tax-deferred investment, though, you have to understand that, and I'll tell you a story. We actually had a guy, we talked to him after one of these webinars, and he said he had $1 million in his 401k. And we said, great job, you're in a great spot, but let's actually look at this a little further. And he showed us a statement, and it has his name and $1 million. And I said, you don't have $1 million. He said, yes, I do. Look at the statement again. I said, yes, I see that, but you're missing a name next to yours. Whose name is that? Uncle Sam, because we have to understand that Uncle Sam is going to get a portion of this throughout your retirement. And here's the deal. You're either gonna take money out and have to pay taxes, or he's gonna force you to take money out, which will pay taxes. And why does he do that? Well, that's what's called a required minimum distribution. And because you've gone so long without paying taxes, and because Uncle Sam's in debt, required minimum distributions are a way for them to get some of your money to cover some of these revenues that they need. And so that starts at 73, where you're forced to take money out. Or if you're born in 1960 or after, it's age 75. So we need to be prepared for when that time comes by planning now, so we're not forced to take out more money than we want to at unknown tax rates. Because again, we don't know what tax rates are going to be in the future, but if you're expecting to be higher, would you rather pay that tax now or later is the idea with that tax deferred investment. So we have to remember that Uncle Sam is a partner on those investments, and we need to decide when we're going to kick him out. Is it going to be now or is it going to be later? It's going to be now when tax rates are lower or later when they're higher. So that's the idea there with that tax deferred investment. Now, you're probably thinking, Joe, you've got me thinking this is the worst investment in the world. This is the worst place to keep my money. I would actually argue that that may not be true. And the reason why is because if you've done this the right way, maybe when you put money into that tax deferred investment, it may have been, years ago when tax rates were higher than right now. Remember, right now taxes are on sale. So if you put your money in when tax rates were here, well, good, because you got a tax deduction, a tax savings. And so would you rather pay your taxes here or today at here? Obviously, we'd rather pay them today. And so if you made that decision there to defer your taxes, great job, because you deferred them to pay them lower in the future. But here's the issue. If we don't do that now, we may not have that good of opportunity moving forward. And so the idea is you always want to pay your taxes at the lowest rate possible. Well, right now, if tax rates are low, do you want to pay them now or do you want to pay them later when we expect tax rates to go up? So that's the idea of this investment. So if you act now, this could be a really good investment is the idea. And if you have not done anything since 2017 to take advantage of this tax sale, I'll be pretty frank with you, you may be missing out on opportunities. You may have missed and left money on the table, but I'll be the first to tell you we can't change a past. We can only change a future. So we're not going to dwell on the past, but understand if you have not done anything, it's more of a reason to get started now to start being more proactive and take advantage of this current tax sale while we have it before tax rates go up for good, in my opinion. So that's the idea of the tax deferred investment. So let's transition then and talk about what are some alternatives here? What can we do differently other than just the tax deferred investment? How can we have some diversification here, that buzzword? How do we make sure not all of our eggs are in one basket? And that's where we're going to bring up what we call the tax-free investment. So there's many different types of vehicles that could be placed in this tax-free investment or in this tax-free bucket. We're primarily going to talk about a Roth IRA today. And so with a Roth IRA is when you put in $10,000 up front, you get no tax deduction. So this works in an opposite way to the tax deferred bucket we just discussed. In a tax-free bucket, you say you pay taxes on $10,000, but then it grows to $100,000. And when you take out $100,000, how much tax do you pay? Zero. So all of the growth is tax-free, and since you've already paid the tax, there's no tax due at all. And so tax deferred, you pay tax on $100,000. Tax-free, you take out $100,000. It's all tax-free. So always ask, if you had a magic wand, where do you want all your money? And obviously everyone says, I want it in tax-free. And then we have to ask ourselves is, where do we all have all of our money? And of course, we all have our money in tax deferred. I've heard a number, and it says that $40 trillion are in tax deferred dollars right now. There's less than $1 trillion in tax free. And so if that's the case, there's 40 times more money in tax deferred. But everyone wants their money in tax free. So why is this the case? Well, remember there's been some limits on the tax-free, the Roth IRA hasn't been around forever. There's all these different things. But the main reason is because of education. People just don't know that you can shift money from tax-deferred to tax-free. And if they do know, they may not know how to do that in an efficient way. And so that's what we're going to talk about here today is how do we do this shift from tax-deferred and tax-free. And I'm going to tell you that just about anyone can do this right now, regardless of your situation. So there's no limits on Roth conversions. Is the buzzword is a Roth conversion. So if you have not heard of a Roth conversion, make sure you write that down, highlight it, circle it. This is definitely one you're going to want to go look into further. I'm sure your advisor has probably been doing this each and every year. So if that's you, then great job. If not, then you probably want to look at this much more further, because what we see with our clients is that the majority of those who have been diligent savers are doing Roth conversions right now because tax rates are on sale. And they're set to go up here in the future is what we all expect. So if that's the case, we want to make sure we're planning for it now is the idea. So with this Roth conversion, again, it's very simple. You move from the tax deferred to tax free. Now, if we make that shift from there to there, what do we have to do? Well, we've got to pay taxes. And do we want to pay taxes right now? Well, of course not. Who wants to pay taxes right now? But would you rather pay it now or later? And so that's what you have to ask yourself. Do we want to pay it now when they're on sale or later when they're higher? And you're the one who decides what you want to do there. Now, when it comes to Roth conversion, we typically don't recommend everyone to convert everything all at once. We typically recommend small amounts over time in a smart way. And so you may not, like for example, I'll share a story. We had a guy, $3 million come in to see us, and he said, Joe, love the webinar, I want to convert everything. And I had to pause for a second. I said, oh, you want to pay over $1.5 million in taxes? And of course he said no. And what we did is we actually looked to do this a little bit over time to make sure we were taking advantage of lower tax rates. The key with a Roth conversion is to make sure you're paying the all-in lowest tax rate you'll see. So you don't want to do too much to where you're paying too much in taxes, but you also don't want to do too little to where you're leaving money on the table during these low tax rate environments. So that's the key of a Roth conversion. And to really drive this home, I like to bring up this commercial here that many of you probably remember from your childhood. And this is the Fram oil filter commercial where he says you can pay $4 for a Fram oil filter today, or you can pay $200 in the future for me to fix this problem. You can pay me now, or you can pay me later. And then he looks at the camera and he shrugs his shoulder and he says, the choice is yours. And I would think that that is the same thing that Uncle Sam is saying to us today. You have all of this tax deferred money you've been saving all of these years. Do you want to pay it now, or do you want to pay it at higher rates in the future? And so that's what you have to decide when it comes to Roth conversions of what do you want to do? What do you think is best for your situation there? Also, I wrote this book, so I'm sure some of you have either seen this or read this, called I Hate Taxes. It was actually an Amazon bestseller in taxes and retirement planning, and it's a fun title. Obviously, I hate taxes. Now, I want to be very clear. I don't hate taxes. I think taxes are good. I just don't want to tip Uncle Sam, is obviously what I explained earlier as well. And so the whole point of this book, though, is how do we lower your taxes but also own your retirement. Now, own your retirement, there's a specific reason why we use that phrase, is because if we don't take action, if we are not proactive from a tax planning standpoint, we are letting the government decide how much taxes we're going to pay on all those late savings we've had all these years. And I don't know about you, but do you want to put your trust in your hands or Uncle Sam's hands moving forward? Because if we take no action, we are putting trust in Uncle Sam, and he's going to make tax rates whatever they want him to for us to decide, for us to pay it in the future. Versus if we have our plan, we can decide if we want to pay taxes now or later and have more control and diversification and flexibility of where our investments are structured, so we have more of a tax smart plan in retirement so that we can pay the least amount of taxes is ultimately the goal. So if you have not read that book, I would highly encourage you to. And we've gotten some really good feedback on it. And it will just help you really understand this whole tax story a little more, so you can be better have a better feel as you make decisions there of what to do there. So definitely go read that book would be my recommendation. I know I'm a little biased, but it's a good book for understanding that concept that we just discussed. All right, so let's move on to the next pillar here, which is the healthcare planning pillar. So with the healthcare planning pillar, as I've talked about earlier, there's two things we really want to discuss here today. That's Medicare planning and long-term care planning. And so when we start off with Medicare planning, let's start off with the Medicare ABCs is what we call them. So you've got Part A, which is technically no cost. And so you've already paid for Part A all of your life. This is what comes out of your paycheck every year, year in and year out. And then when you get to 65, when you start on Medicare, you're not having to pay for Part A anymore. That's no cost to you. Part B, well, that's going to be a little different. You do have to pay for Part B, and this is going to be the additional coverage. And most people take Part A and Part B, obviously. And so for Part B, the premium is going to be based on your income. So the higher your income is, the more you have to pay. The lower your income, the less you have to pay. Now, let me ask you, is that fair? Is that fair that if you have a higher income, you've got to pay more than someone who does not have as high of an income? I don't know if that's fair, right? And so what we try to do with our clients is we try to plan to make sure that we can show their income being lower in retirement. Now, does that mean they're going to eat ramen noodles every day and live in a cardboard box? No, it means that we're going to be tax smart. We're going to pull out money from tax-free vehicles like we just talked about, so that their income on the IRS standpoint is not show high. If it's tax-free, it's not going to count as income, and it's basically going to show that they're low income, even though they could be living on $100,000 a year. And so we have to get ahead of this with Medicare premiums to make sure that we're not paying more for healthcare and retirement than we need to. And what we see with a lot of people who are high net worth or high income is, they've worked hard all their life, they've saved, and they've done their work up to this point. And then when they go to get their Social Security check, they don't get as much of it because Medicare comes out of that. The cost for Medicare comes out of their Social Security. And so we want to make sure that people are actually getting that Social Security check that they've worked so hard for. And so being aware of how Medicare premiums are calculated will help you see and make sure that you're not overpaying for healthcare coverage when you don't have to. You're getting the same coverage regardless of what your income is. Don't pay more for it is my advice. So that's part B. And then the decision after Part A and Part B becomes, what should we do from a supplemental standpoint? That's where Part C and D comes into play. So what is supplemental Medicare coverage? Well, that's just additional coverage to make sure that you've got less payments to make on the bills that you're coming in from a healthcare standpoint. And so what we would recommend for Part C and D and that supplemental policy is make sure you work with someone who specializes in this area. So something we do with our clients is we actually have a Medicare person here on our team. That's all they do. That's what they do day in and day out, is review Medicare plans. They look at all the different 100 insurance companies out there to make sure that our clients are getting the best coverage, to making sure they're getting the best cost, to making sure that they're looking at our clients' health history and upcoming medications they're going to be expected to need, or family health history, and what is their health going to look like moving forward, to decide what type of coverage is going to be best for them. So a lot of decisions go into that. A lot of planning goes into that. So yes, you could become a Medicare planning expert on your own if you'd like to. I don't know if that's how I'd want to spend retirement if that was me in your shoes, but that's an option. But my biggest advice is make sure you get help from someone who is truly going to help you there. You can trust. That's why one reason we want to do it in-house with our clients is so that we know it's someone we can trust and know that that's someone that's going to get the job done for them. Because obviously you could go to anyone out there, and how do you know if you can trust them or not, right? So finding that trusted person to help you with that decision is going to make your job a lot easier. But what we can say is that most people get some sort of supplemental plan. The amount, the cost, and all that is going to depend on your situation. So again, it's just understanding your specific situation is going to be important. So Part A and B, and then definitely want to look at a supplement plan is what we see with most people. All right, so that's that. And then we want to move on to long-term care. So for long-term care, this one's a big risk now, obviously, with people living longer than ever, and also because of healthcare cost increasing. So if you've known someone that has needed long-term care, you know the severity of this. So 3 out of my 4 grandparents have actually needed long-term care. So I've been able to really walk through what that would look like, not only financially, but also emotionally. And it's just not fun. I'll be pretty frank with it. It's just not a fun time. It's not an encouraging time, but it's part of life, and we got to plan for it because it's most likely going to happen to all of us. And so if you look at the stats here on the screen, there's 10,000 baby boomers that turn 65 every day. Now that's happened for the last 10 years, and it's going to happen for 10 more. And so if we know that we're going to have more of a need for long-term care because there's all this influx into the system, then we need to start planning. And also knowing that 7 out of 10 people will require long-term care in their lifetime to some degree tells us this is serious. And if it's serious from that standpoint, it's also going to be serious from a cost standpoint because it costs quite a bit, as you may know if you've experienced this. And so if you have someone come take care of you at home, it could cost $50,000 to $60,000 a year just to have a nurse take care of you at your home. Now that's what most people want, and that's what most people get, and so the costs there are a little less than some of the other options. So that's a good thing if that's what you want. Nursing home is kind of the extreme, right? Maybe you can't have a nurse take care of you at home. You need more specific guidance, throughout 24/7. And if that's the case, you could be looking to pay, nearly $100,000 a year just to get that type of healthcare coverage. long-term care coverage in retirement. And so, if you need a nursing home for 1, 2, 3 years, you can see that can really add up and be very costly, and how we're going to plan for that financially. And so one question we often get is, hey, I'll just get long-term care insurance and I'll be good to go, right? And if you would have asked me that 5 years ago, I probably would have said, yeah, that's probably the best option of how to plan for this. But if you ask me today, I would tell you that, over the last few years, we really have not offered long-term care insurance to our clients just because the cost is very extreme right now. And I'm not saying it's not worth it. Don't get that. Definitely look into that if you feel that may be best for you. I'm just sharing our personal experience of what we've done with our clients because we found other ways that may be better able to plan for that. To maybe better use our resources in other ways, so we're not overpaying for an insurance that, hey, one, we may not need. I mean, I'll expect we'll need it, but hey, we may not. And then also, if we don't use it all, we may not ever get our money back is the idea. And, it can just be costly. So how are we going to come up with the money now to cover those premium payments? Knowing we may not need long-term care until age 83 is the average age. So those are some considerations there for you. But you have to have a plan because we know we're going to need it in some way. So there's a multitude of different ways to plan for it. It's going to depend on what your situation is, how much money you have, what kind of care do you want. There's a lot of things in place there that you have to evaluate to make that decision. So with that healthcare plan, I want to transition over to the estate planning pillar because these two, they can go together in some areas. And so I think it would be a good one to tie together. So again, with the estate planning pillar, it's important just to have something in place because we see too many people do not have this in place. So if you don't have an estate planning in place right now, this would be one of the most things I would say you want to be urgent about to make sure you get this in place because obviously we don't know what can happen at any time. And so when we think about an estate planning, the planning pillar, it's all about how do we take this jumbled up mess and start to organize it? How do we get this stuff out of our head and put it on paper to make sure that we're good to go? And so the first thing we always recommend is someone to look at working with an attorney. Now, you could do these documents on your own. No one's stopping you. But I can tell you that I wouldn't even do that myself, even with the knowledge I have on estate planning, because I've never drafted a legal document before. I've done a ton of estate planning, but I've never drafted a legal document. I'm not an attorney. So if I've never done something before, I don't want to trust it for myself. I want to make sure I'm working with someone who's done it hundreds of times. It's really the same thing with your retirement plan. You want to work, how many times have you planned a retirement is something we ask people. If you've only planned one, this is your first time, how do you know if you're missing anything? How do you know, if you've been through it or not? And that's why we recommend you work with a team who's worked with hundreds of people so that they know and have experienced what could go right, what could go wrong, so that you're, paid for their expertise to not make mistakes is ultimately the idea. So same idea with an attorney. Now, when looking for an attorney, let me kind of give you a caution or something to be aware of, as you, I'm sure all know, that attorneys get compensated on the amount of documents they do for you. And the more complex the document, the more they make. And so you just have to be careful that some attorneys may push specific documents that you may not need or may not be as useful for you, but they're going to get compensated more. So just be very aware of that. Make sure you're working with someone who's going to act in your best interest truly, that you can trust. And so that's actually something why so with our clients here at our firm, we actually have an estate planning attorney who meets with all of our clients here at our office with our team to make sure that we're not missing anything, to make sure that we can trust what that estate planning is saying, but more importantly, make sure that everyone is communicating on the same page. There's a lot of estate plans that get done that don't get funded or don't get put in place. And so with that communication where we're all working as a team and collaborating, nothing gets, fall through the cracks. So we see a lot of times where advisors won't focus on estate planning. They won't, meet with your attorney, and we just get things missed or people are on different pages. So I would highly encourage you to work with an advisor team who has an estate planning attorney there to meet with you, so you got everything in one place. And the other reason we like having an attorney at our office is we don't have to worry about them paying an outrageous cost. So we don't take a referral fee from them. So our clients are going to get a great cost for that. They're going to be able to get basic documents starting at $500 and, more sophisticated trusts starting at about $2,000. So, we feel very confident that they're going to get a great plan there and get everything they need in place. And also we can hold them accountable to make sure that everything is put in place the right way after they get everything that they need. So extremely important one, but again, just work with an attorney that is going to be able to get all that done for you. So when it comes to the particular documents you have in place is what I want to cover now. So for those particular documents, the first one I want to discuss is the power of attorney document. And there's two types of power of attorney. There's a financial power of attorney and there's a healthcare power of attorney. And now I think that this is the most important document. And the reason why is for a financial power of attorney, that's going to be who makes decisions for you financially if you can no longer make those. So if you can't pay the bills, who's going to do that? The other one is healthcare power of attorney, is who's going to make those end-of-life healthcare decisions when you can't make it. If you're in a coma, who's going to make those decisions for you? And the other thing to understand here is there's something called a living will. So you'll see the will here. So there's two types. So there's the last will and testament, and there's the living will. The living will is going to be your opportunity to tell that healthcare power of attorney of how you want your end-of-life healthcare decisions to be made, and then they'll be the one who enacts that for you, is how that works. The last will and testament is going to be there for any assets that go to probate to make sure that it goes to the right place of where you want to do. So very big misconception is people think that a will avoids probate. That's not the case. The will is just basically a directive to show like where's everything going, who's going to be in charge here. But if you really want to avoid probate, you have to have specific things in place. Now, let's start off with what is probate. Well, probate is where if you don't have beneficiaries or specific designations on your assets, it will go to probate court, and that can cost 4 to 7% of your assets. So let's say you had $1 million and went to probate. You could be paying $40,000 to $70,000 on those assets, where you did not have to do that if you just had a better plan in place. And not only is it costly, but it also takes a lot of time, so you could be going a long time without your beneficiaries getting those assets. So we need to make sure we're planning against probate. So one way we plan against probate is by having a trust. So a trust, if your assets are in a trust, it helps avoid probate. Now, something we're going to talk about today is, do you need a trust? With our clients, I would say probably only about half of them actually need a trust. The other half, they don't need it. They may just have a 401k, an IRA, bank accounts, a house, a car. Well, we can title all of those things in a way that we don't need a trust, but we'll still avoid probate. So how do we do that? Well, let's start off with your retirement accounts. If you just add a beneficiary on those accounts, that money will go right to the beneficiary, avoid probate. If you have a house, this is important, you're going to want to look to have what's called a transfer on death designation on that. It's called a TOD, and that is going to allow your house to pass to a beneficiary and avoid probate. Same thing with your car. And then for your bank accounts, you want to make sure you have something called a payable on death. And so that is going to make sure that that passes to a beneficiary as well. So the big one is a transfer on death on your house. We see many people don't have that in place or have not thought of that. And so that's something we want to make sure all of you can start to take that right away and get implemented there. So those are the main things of how you can avoid probate without a trust. Now, we get the question a lot of who is a trust right for? Should everyone get a trust? Well, no, not everyone should. But if you have minor children, or maybe you have a beneficiary you don't trust. So we had a client before, they had an adult child who they just didn't trust would spend the money the right way. So they allowed the trust to pay them out a certain amount each year over their lifetime instead of being able to get all of that money up front. And so you can be really creative with these trusts on things like that. So that could be an important way. If you have more complex situation, more like, you have a lot of rental properties, you have businesses, you have things like that, that can be more of a reason to have a trust, just to make sure you're more protected. So those are all different reasons of why you would have it. And if you would have any of those needs, typically a revocable trust would solve those issues there for that. Now, there's two other reasons why you could need a trust, and one is what we're going to go back to that healthcare plan for, is to help plan for long-term care. Now, this is a particular type of trust that you want to make sure you're working with an estate planning attorney who focuses on elder law. And so our attorney here at our office, that's what he does. And so he's able to really understand how these plans work. But it's called a Medicaid Protection Trust. Now, this is not right for everyone. I hope I've made that clear. I hope I made that clear about everything I say today. Everything I say is not specific guidance. It's general information. It's for you to decide if it's right for you. If you want to schedule that call for us, you can more than happily do so. I'll actually have someone on our team pop that up for you, so you can schedule that if you want to, and we'll actually help you walk through some of these decisions to see, is this right for you or is it not? What do you need to do moving forward? So how this Medicaid Protection Trust works is it's a way for you to avoid spending down your assets. So for Medicaid planning, the government will give you long-term care assistance after you spend down your assets. Well, if we can get these assets out of our estate so the government doesn't see that it's, our money, and there's a specific rule, right now it's 5 years here in Ohio, it's different, years in different states, but as long as you do it and you have that many years before you need long-term care, then you'll be able to basically say that does not count as part of your estate. And so it allows you to, instead of spending down your assets, well, it's out of your estate, so now you don't have to spend them down, and now you can be eligible for Medicaid coverage, so you can get the long-term care at no cost, and you're getting that out of your estate, so you can still go to the beneficiaries when you pass away. So that's the idea of a Medicaid Protection Trust. Again, there's a lot of things to look out for, but when you look at the cost for what the value can give you, it could be very beneficial for the right person. So definitely would recommend looking into that if long-term care is a concern of yours, or if leaving money behind is a concern of yours as well. So that's the idea with a trust. The other thing with a trust is understanding, if you have a state tax issue. So right now, not as many people have an estate tax issue. So what an estate tax is that if your assets are above a certain point, you have to pay a 40% tax on that money. Now, right now that limit is so high, but what we're concerned about moving forward is what is that limit going to be in 5-10 years? If you look back in time, that limit has been if you have $1 million or more, you're going to be subject to the estate tax. And so could it get to that low again? It could. And so it's something to keep an eye on, that if you're reaching that point and you have, a high net worth individual, you need to look to start to protect some of that money so you're avoiding paying that estate tax when you pass away, so your beneficiaries can get more money. So maybe not something you have to put in place now, but with our clients, we're looking at this every year and looking at the rule changes that are going to be made to see how that's going to impact us there. Now, here's another thought too. I know I've kind of mentioned that some attorneys will get compensated more to do certain things. I want to share a client story. And when this happened, it just really stuck out to me of why it's so important to have that estate planning attorney at your firm. And the reason why is because we had a client who went to one of those state dinners for an estate planning attorney. And obviously, if you know to go to one of those, they're probably going to try to sell you something. And so they told him that you need to get a $7,000 trust. And the client came to us and said, hey, why have we not talked about this? This trust seems really neat. Seems like I really need it. And I said, look, it's an awesome trust. Don't get me wrong. We actually use that same trust for different people. Now, I think they're overcharging you for that. I don't think it's worth that. But I don't think you need it is a key. And so he was able to meet with our estate planning attorney, and he got everything he needed done for $750. So he could have paid $7,000. Instead, he paid $750. And he got everything he needed moving forward. So just be aware that you're not overpaying for things you don't need is the key when it comes to these documents. They're very important to have in place, but you may not need everything is the idea. So make sure you're working with someone you trust. Really not only an attorney you trust, but also a financial planning team that you trust so that you guys can collaborate and make sure you get the best plan in place. So those are some of the important decisions to make when it comes to estate planning. Some of the other key considerations are charities. Do you want to leave money behind when you pass away? Well, if so, make sure you're getting your tax benefits there and making sure you're structuring your assets in a way that you're going to give more to the charities and also more to your beneficiaries. Making sure your assets are titled the right way. We've talked about that. Taxes is a big one. I mean, I joke around and say, do you want the IRS to be your beneficiary when you pass away? Because if you don't do tax planning, you're basically saying, sorry kids, sorry spouse, Uncle Sam's going to get a big chunk here because we didn't plan the right way. And so if it's important for you to plan for your spouse and for your kids, I would highly encourage you to make sure you've got that tax plan in place today so you can prepare for that time. Okay? Because if you wait too long, it may be too late. So that's the idea there. And so hopefully that helps you give a better picture of what estate planning is and how to plan for that. So next, let's transition into what I believe is the biggest concern in retirement, as you all know, is simply running out of money. And so in this next pillar, we're going to talk about income planning so that we can make sure we are not running out of money, to ensure that we are being smart about getting this income and this paycheck for the rest of our life. So I've already shared that analogy that, hey, we retire and the income drops off. Now we have to create our own bridge. And so I'm going to share with you 3 key points when creating that bridge to make sure that you are not running out of money throughout retirement. The first key that we're going to discuss is taxes. Now, we've already talked about this in depth, and as you can see, taxes are the foundation for a retirement plan, in my opinion. Taxes play a part in each of those pillars. It plays a part in the investment plan because if you get growth that's not tax-free, well, you may not be getting as much growth. It's important in the income planning one because it's all about the money you keep, not about the money you take. If you take out $100,000 from your IRA, do you get to keep $100,000? No, you get to keep $100,000 minus taxes, and then that's what you get. So throughout retirement, we need to make sure that we are keeping more of that money we've worked hard for and less of it going to the Uncle Sam, because if we do that, we'll have less of a risk of running out of money because we'll have more money over our retirement to spend and enjoy. Maybe it's more money to give away, maybe it's more money to not have to worry about as many things throughout retirement. So that's what we want to look at there. And then when you look at the healthcare planning, if you have to take out $50,000 or $100,000 a year for healthcare expense, what if you do that and you got to pay taxes? Is that going to bump you up higher tax brackets? Is that going to force your Social Security to be more taxable, your Medicare to be at a higher cost, capital gains to be higher? So we need to understand how all this stuff plays together, right? Estate planning. Do you want to leave money behind your beneficiaries? Do you want to go to Uncle Sam? So again, just the importance of taxes from your entire standpoint. So if you're not looking at taxes when you're doing retirement planning, I would say you're doing it wrong. Taxes have got to be the first thing you look at in all the decisions that you make. If you just have an investment plan in place and it's just in the S&P 500, and then that's great, but are you missing anything else? Is ultimately the question you want to ask yourself. So just making sure you keep more is important from a tax standpoint. Less to Uncle Sam, more to you. The second decision we have to make here is when to take Social Security. Now, this is one question we get often is, should we take it at 62 or should we take it at 70? Now, I'm going to give you a boring answer and tell you it depends, because it depends on many factors. It depends on if you're married or single. It depends on your health. Depends on what is your income need? What do your asset situation look like? What does your tax situation look like? All of those factor into that decision. And I always joke with this one too, but if you tell me when you're going to die, I'll have a better feel of when you should take it. But since none of us know that, is why we have to plan so much for when to take Social Security. And the other key of Social Security is that it's going to account for about 40% on our income on average in retirement. And so if that's the case, that's almost half of where we're going to get our income from. We need to make sure we're making the right decision of when to take it. And I've seen studies that have shown that if you don't take Social Security at the most optimal time for your situation, you could be wasting $100,000 over your retirement. You could get $100,000 less from Social Security. So that's why that decision is so important there. And then the third one is market volatility, because if we get 40% of our income from Social Security, well, where are we going to get the other 60%? If we have a pension, that's going to be helpful with that. But only 20% of people have a pension nowadays. So if that means we have to get our money from investments, what are we going to do if the market's down? What are we going to do now that we're in retirement and we don't have as much of a time horizon? And what are we going to do if the market's down? Think about it. If you're invested like you're 30 or 40 and the market goes down, you're fine because you have enough time to make that loss up. But if you're invested and you're 60 and 65 and you're in retirement and now the market's down, but also you need income from your investments, so that's going to be another loss. And then the question is do you have enough time to make it up? And so we call that sequence of returns risk. And so if you are not protected in the 5 years after you retire or the 5 years before you retire, you may be putting a lot of stress on your investments. And so think about it, from a standpoint that, all right, let's say you have $1 million. Let's say that the market goes down 50%, 2008 happens. Obviously worst case scenario, but let's just play it out for an example's sake. $1 million goes down to $500,000. Let's say you need $50,000 to live on as well. Well, now you only have $450,000. You had $1 million, now you have $450,000 within a year's time. How do you feel? Do you feel confident with the next 20 to 30 years of that retirement if something like that were to occur? And so that's why we want to make sure that when it comes to market volatility, that roller coaster of the stock market, we are being protected for that money that we need early on in our retirement, making sure that income that we get from our investments early on in retirement is protected, safe, secure, and stable so that we don't have to worry about the market going down and wondering how much we can take out or wondering if we can retire or wondering if we have to go back to work. We want a rock solid income plan is the idea there. And that really leads me to the last pillar here, which is investment planning, which to carry on that concept is, are we taking on too much risk? Do we really need to take on as much risk as we are? And I like to think of this mountain analogy here. So all of your life you've been working and saving and climbing this retirement mountain. And then you get to the top here and you've done well. But we still got to get down the mountain, right? And what got us here to the top may not get us there to the bottom. And so we need to make sure that we have a plan in place to combat all these risks and concerns that we've talked about today, these 5 pillars that we've discussed. And so when we think about an investment plan as we come down that mountain, we may want to think more protect versus going up, which has been growth. Now, we still need enough growth to keep up with inflation and rising healthcare costs and things like that, but also understand that if we want to try to seek double-digit return every year, we're going to be taking on quite a bit of risk. And do we really want to take that risk at this point? Would we rather have bigger barns, or would we rather make sure we don't run out of money? Because what we see with a lot of our clients who have been diligent savers is they have taken way too much risk at this point in their life. They could take much less risk, have more stability moving forward, and still accomplish all their goals with more peace of mind. I mean, think about it. If you flip a coin, and if it's heads or tails if you're going to succeed or not, is that really the retirement we want? Or do we really want to take the chances of loss out of the picture to ensure that we can get through any storm? And so that's a question that you have to ask yourself. And what we see with most people is that they can take much less risk and still accomplish their goals. And so that's the idea of having that investment plan in place to avoid mistakes there. So with that being said, we'll go ahead and wrap up and answer all of the questions. So I'm going to answer as many questions I have during the last few minutes here. Before we do that, I want to offer that session for you to come talk to us if that's something that would be important for you. So if you just, I'll have our team pop up that link here. And so if you want to click on that link, and you'll be able to find a time on our schedule that works for you. And then we'll be able to chat through some of these pillars here, chat through the level of concern that you have for these particular pillars, and to see where can you improve. And what specific guidance are you going to need moving forward? And so during that call, we'll basically get a feel for your situation, give you as much help as we can. And then at the end of that call, if you are looking for further help, and if we feel we can add value to your situation, we can schedule another time to explore further what it could look like to work with us, and what we would recommend you to do with some of these concerns that you have here. So if you're finding yourself with these pillars here, if you're feeling like you're missing anything, maybe with the tax plan, you're thinking, man, I don't have an advisor that's looking at that. I don't have any money on Roth. I'm not considering the tax impact of Social Security and all those things. That may be a reason to get on our calendar to get further help. Or maybe you don't have an estate plan and you're ready to take that step. That could be another reason. Or maybe you're not sure where you're going to get income in retirement. Or maybe you think you're taking on too much risk in your investment. So if any of those things apply to you, then we're here to help. This is what we specialize in if that's the help you're looking for. Now, I do want to be very particular here. We do have a boutique firm, which means we specifically serve a specific criteria of clients, which means we don't work with everyone. Now, we'd certainly love to work with everyone. That's why we do all this educational reach. That's why we hop on TV. That's why we do these webinars, workshops, YouTube. We try to reach as many people as we can. But as a capacity as a firm with the level of service we deliver, it's not fair to our current clients if we were to just say, let's help everyone, because we just deliver too much to them. So I want to make that clear for a couple reasons. One, if you are looking for that type of help, well, then that's maybe what we can give to you. But if we can't help you particularly, we will at least make sure that when you leave that call, that session with us, that you're going to be in a better place and you have the right guidance moving forward of what to do there. So if it's not us, we'll at least make sure you have someone to help you guide there if we don't feel that we can help you fully moving forward. So just want to be very transparent there. Just want to set the expectations. But regardless of your situation, schedule that session. We're here to help and make sure that you're in a better place than when you came in. So that's our goal there. And we'll go ahead and get into questions here. So the first question I see here is, how do I know if my advisor is doing all 5 of these? Well, I'd first start off by evaluating to see, what are you missing? Like I said just a minute ago, do you have money in Roth? Do you have someone looking at your tax return? Is your advisor asking for your tax return? If they're not doing those things, I would tell you they're probably not specializing in tax planning. If you schedule that call, we'll be able to tell you pretty quickly to see what your advisor has been doing for you and what they have not been doing for you, just to make sure they're not missing anything from that second opinion standpoint for that. If you don't have an estate plan, you can tell that your advisor's probably not doing that. So those are just some gauges to see if they are or not. But if you need further guidance or assistance, or maybe your advisor's doing everything and you think they are, you just want to make sure. We're more than happy to tell you if your advisor's doing everything they need to, and if so, great job, good job. You're good to go moving forward, and you're safe moving forward from a financial planning standpoint. That's great. All right, so next question here. Are there limits on Roth conversions? So there is no limits on Roth conversions. You could convert everything you have. I do want to make it clear, though, on Roth conversions is that it's not for everyone. But for most retirees who have been diligent savers, I would encourage you to take a heavy look at it. And so we typically use a rule of thumb at our firm that if you have $250,000 or less saved, it may not be as important to do a Roth conversion. It could still be, but it may not be as important because your withdrawals in retirement may not ever increase your tax brackets or cause any harm. But if you have $250,000 to $1 million in tax-deferred investments, then you need to start looking and taking a closer look at Roth conversions and tax planning strategies, because you're going to have quite a bit of a tax burden having that much in those accounts. And then if you have $1 or $2 million or more, typically you have no choice but to really focus in on Roth conversions and tax planning. Most of our clients who have that amount of money, most of them are doing some sort of Roth conversions, whether it's a bigger one or a smaller one. It's almost inevitable because you're going to have to pay a ton of money on that money when you take it out for RMDs in the future. So you may want to look to start getting ahead of that and start to really take some of those RMDs a little earlier. It's kind of the concept. So you can start paying those taxes. So when you do have to take that RMD, it's not going to cause as much harm is the idea there. So hopefully that kind of gives you a feel there. Another question here, can you repeat the 3 keys of income in retirement? Yes, so taxes, how do we take out money from our investments? What's the tax impact? Also ensuring that we can get Social Security tax-free is something many people don't consider. Social Security now is taxable to most people, but if you are able to plan appropriately, you could actually get your Social Security tax-free and not have to pay any taxes when you receive that check in retirement. So that's something I'd encourage you to look at as well. And that's the second point, is Social Security, deciding when to take it, right? Because it's going to account for about half of our income. And then the third point there is market volatility, making sure we're not taking too much risk with those investments that we have. Question here is, how does it work if we want to work with your firm? So yeah, as I mentioned, if you want to schedule that session with us, that's really a discovery session is what we call it, for us to get to know you to get to know our firm, and just see if we can add further value. And we'll be very transparent if we can add further value or not, if we feel that our fee would be worthwhile for you or not. And if so, then we'll explore further if you're open to that. And we don't ever pressure anyone. That's just not who we are. And so if you're looking for further help, then we can certainly do that. But again, just to set expectations, like we get a lot of calls from these webinars, from TV, from radio, from the book I wrote. And so we just want to really set expectations that like we can't help everyone as much as we want to, but hop on that call. We'll just see how we can help you as much as possible. So don't want to make it clear that everyone here is going to work with us. It's just not realistic, but we'll see if we can help further in any way we can. Did you say TOD on house? Yes, so TOD means transfer on death. So that means you want to make sure you have that designation for your house particularly, also your car, to make sure that you can avoid probate there. Let's see here. Does your firm charge fees for each pillar? That's just a good question in general. So you want to work with a team who is not just charging outrageous fees. Now understand that everything is regulated, so most firms are going to charge about the same. The key for you to understand is, are you getting the full value? Are you getting 5 out of 5 of the pillars for your fee, or are you only getting 1 out of 5, but paying the same cost? So with our compensation, how we're compensated is we do an assets under management fee model. So we are paid a percentage of the assets that we manage over time. Most of our clients' all-in fee is about 1% or less, depending on their situation and what their needs are. We do not charge a flat rate planning fee as well. So some firms will charge the AUM fee, then also a planning fee. We don't do that. We want to make it transparent and easy to understand, so we just do the AUM fee. But we do all 5 of those pillars for that one fee. And so you want to make sure that's the case. If you work with a firm, they're not trying to nickel and dime you. I mean, obviously for legal documents, you would have to pay more for, as I shared earlier. But we at least, our clients get a credit towards that if they work with us. So, just those things are what we would want to look for. So that's how that works. But yeah, we don't charge, like, we don't do one-time plans, if maybe that's your question. We only are looking for ongoing relationships at this point. We used to do the one-time plans, but we just didn't want to. We were only looking for people who are truly committed to improving their situation, because a lot of this changes every year. Tax rules change, there's so many changes. What we're finding is that if we just do a one-time plan for a client, they're not going to get the full plan. Even if we put a 10-year tax plan together for them, that's going to change each year depending on how the rules change. So I wouldn't encourage that model if that's what you're looking for. I would encourage more of an ongoing relationship with a firm that you can trust, just to make sure you're not missing anything there. So that's looks like we're about up on time. I do see a lot more questions here. So if I wasn't able to answer your question, if you schedule that call, we'll make sure we cover those on that call, or we'll make sure at least answer those questions for you to make sure we can get all of those addressed. So thanks for attending the webinar today. I see that many of you have already scheduled that session with us, so we're looking forward to seeing how we can guide you further there. And if you have any more questions, feel free to reach out to us. Enjoy the rest of your day, and hopefully these 5 pillars will help you live that successful retirement that you've been dreaming of. Have a great day.